Hello and welcome to BNC Sports. We are joined by a special guest. He is a four-time national champion and a Hall of Famer. We are joined by the great coach, Rudy Hubbard. Coach, first and foremost, I hope you and your family and the FAMU are well.
Thank you very much, James, and the same to you. We are doing well, and I'm glad to say it.
Thank you, sir. Recently, we learned that the late, great coach, Mr. Bobby Lang, has moved on. Can you talk about that particular gentleman and what he means to the FAMU League?
Yes, I'd be glad to do it. You know, Coach Lang, I got to tell you a story that leads into how I feel about him and have felt about him. But, when I came here from Ohio State, I was used to having the best of the best, the best coaches, the best facilities up there. They got a bunch of money that they spend. And so, I was expecting to have to do a whole lot of work, as I hired the coaches at Florida A&M. So I began to talk with the guys who were already on the staff, and I was told that I had to keep 4 members from the previous staff. And because they were all teachers as well. So Coach Lang ended up being, he was as good as any coach I had ever been around. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And what I found is that Coach Lang, Coach Kittles, Coach Mungin, and at the time, Coach Griffin decided not to stay. But all of those guys, were really, really excellent coaches in their own right. And they were all teaching and coaching other sports. And not only that, but they were winning. I mean, they were all, Coach Lang is a Hall of Fame track coach as well. So I was totally shocked. And we got together, and all I had to do, was talk to him about my system. We did have a different way of working. We spent a lot of time coaching at night that they weren't used to, but they rolled up their sleeves, man. And Coach Lang, Coach Kittles kind of led the charge, and we got it done. And I'm just so glad and honored to have had the opportunity to work with Coach Lang, especially.
Coach Hubbard, that particular gentleman, as you say, is a Hall of Famer and a champion. His track program at Florida A&M University was second to none. I mean, they showed up. You talk about the FAMU relays. Take us into some of the things he was able to do that you can recall.
Well, first of all, he was from Jacksonville. That's where he grew up, and so we knew that Jacksonville is really a bed for a lot of outstanding athletes. So, Coach Lang was firmly planted in Jacksonville. In terms of knowing who was where and where to go get the ball players. So he already had a guy named Greg Coleman. And Greg Coleman was already the punter and kicker on our football team, but he also was a hurdler on the track team for Coach Lang. Now, how often are you going to see that on the college level, where a guy is just outstanding like that in 2 different sports like that? But he had been recruited by Coach Lang. Coach Lang had a relationship with Greg's mom, and that was just the bottom line. So we ended up being a great player in Greg Coleman. Of course, now he's in the Black College Hall of Fame. We're proud of him as well. So, but that's the kind of people that Coach Lang had been coaching and recruiting.
Coach Hubbard, what people don't realize, and you alluded to it, is that during those days, or particularly in the HBCU experience, coaches were professors and they coached several different sports and they interacted in different levels. Can you talk a little bit about the diversity of their portfolios, if you will, in terms
I will.
of coaching?
And let me tell you because I wasn't used to that scenario as well, because when I was at Ohio State, that's all we did was coach football. We came in early in the morning, we coached all day and went out and practiced, then coach it into the night. So I came down here with the idea of putting in the same kind of system, but I didn't realize, it took me a while to really understand and realize that these guys were having some long days, man. They were coaching, they were teaching physical education, and then they were coaching their own particular sport, depending on what season we were in. And then they were coaching with me and then meeting all night so that they understood, the kind of system that I wanted to run. And it just was too much. It really was too much. And be honest with you, what happened was I began to want to change the system. We didn't have the resources to just pay salaries for guys to just, okay, I'm gonna quit teaching and I'm gonna come out there and just coach football. And we didn't have those kind of resources. And so, but something had to give because of where I wanted to move the football program. We went 1AA. I wanted to have full-time coaches. And so we had to make some changes. And when we start making changes, some of them were not popular.
Coach, NCAA Division I-A, the NCAA Division I AA.
Yes.
1978 national champions, Florida A&M, and you look at UMass, and you two meet in Wichita. Take us back to the national championship game.
Well, it was a terrible day in terms of weather. And it was one of those days where it had been snowing and the wind was blowing high and, had a little bit of rain. As a matter of fact, the wind was so strong. One time, my punter at the time was Sammy Knight. He punted the ball. It went straight up in the air and started coming back towards him. And it was all we could do to keep that thing from being a negative yard punt. But that's basically, we had to play that game in halves. And we had to, when we had the wind behind us, we had to make it happen. And I'm assuming that was the same thinking that University of Massachusetts tried to employ.
Coach, two-time national champions in terms of black college football, 1977 and 1978. Take us back into that back-to-back championship victory scenarios, if you will.
Yes, sir. Well, back-to-back, the 1977 year, of course, we were actually coming out of the SIAC. And it appeared, I knew we were going to have a pretty good football team. We had just had the year before that, of course, we had gotten beat by Bethune-Cookman, our rival. And everybody was upset, coming out of that ball game. But I knew that if we could just hold on, and we had a bunch of those guys returning, man, and they were outstanding players. And so that's what happened. But you're not talking about, I don't want to start naming them right now because I'll probably forget somebody. And because we were loaded all the way across the board, and I'm talking about guys who could really play. So, we went undefeated. And at the end of the year, University of Texas was undefeated. But then they played a bowl game. We didn't. We just went 11-0. We were finished. University of Texas played a bowl game and lost. So we ended up being the only undefeated, untied team in 1977 in the country. Then we moved on into 1978 with that same team coming back. Okay, and that's when we wanted to go 1AA. And it appeared to me, and I can't remember exactly right now, it's been a long time, but it appeared to me that it was probably like about a month before the season began when we found out that they were going to allow us to be a member of 1AA. It was right before we were about to start practicing. And man, we were so glad because that meant now we're going to play for this championship. Instead of being in 1977, we were voted Black national champs. But in 1978, now we're going to have an opportunity to play and win it on the field. And that's what the 1AA was bringing to the table. Plus, if we were able and fortunate enough to go on TV, we were going to get a take would be like $250,000 for each TV appearance that we were able to get on. We were able to get on 4 of them. And so we had $1 million in our budget that we hadn't previously planned for. So that was big news and big time back in those days.
Coach, you look at HBCUs and PWIs. Now we see a game whereas the University of Miami Hurricanes and the Florida A&M Rattlers meet on the football field, and it happens over at Doak at Florida State University. Take us into that particular contest.
Well, yeah, what we wanted to play a 1A team, and we really didn't care who. We didn't want to play Florida State because we actually Florida State had been so helpful to us whenever we needed them. For instance, when I first got here, we used to have to film our practices, but then we would have to take them to Florida State to get the film developed so we could watch them. And they developed our film with no charge. And we would have to sometimes take our laundry over there to wash our laundry, and they would help us with that. So I mean, they were just too kind and too good. So we didn't want to play them, you know, but we wanted to play anybody else who would play us in the state of Florida or wherever. So we had an opportunity, we thought, to play University of Florida, but that didn't materialize. And then all of a sudden, Miami popped up. And Miami was in the process. They were going to hire Coach Howard Schnellenberger from the Miami Dolphins, and he was going to bring several of the staff from the Dolphins with him. And that was well publicized, and he did that. And so they lined up, and we did a 2-year contract. And so that's what happened. We ended up playing them. They had to come here to Tallahassee twice. They had to come here. We beat them first, and then they had to come play Florida State. And Florida State beat them that same year. But it was a great game for us, man. And a lot of my players had been snubbed. A lot of my players had grown up in Miami and didn't get recruited by Miami. So they were ready to go. And I had to give a pep talk, but I told them guys, Howard Schnellenberger coming from Miami Dolphins, I said, you know, they're going to throw the football. And I don't know how to stop them. We can't stop them. The only thing I can tell you is we got to put a hit on them to a point where they don't want to catch it. And that's what happened. My guys bought into it. And that I remember one time they threw the ball, and my safety, that we call him Night Train Lane, Thomas Lane, he hit that guy that caught the ball. The same time the ball went dead, it didn't even spin, it didn't bounce or nothing. The guy went down, didn't move, and the ball went down at the same time. It didn't move. I knew then, because I had told myself, if they have to stop the game and come and check on a couple of them guys, then I think we can win this ball game. And that's what happened. They had to come out there and check on a couple of them guys, man. And it just seemed like as that game went on, our guys got more excited. And right towards the end, it was 3rd down, and they went for a pass, and L.G. Hendricks, who was defensive tackle, but he was from Miami, jumped up and knocked it down. And they had to go for a field goal to try to tie the game, and they lost. They didn't make the field goal, so we ended up beating them. Now, it was a great game, though.
Now, before your days on the highest of 7 hills, you talk about the Big Ten, and you talk about the Ohio State University Buckeyes, where we know football is also a way of life. 2-time national championships with the Buckeyes, one as a player and one as a coach. Take us in there coming out of Hubbard, Ohio.
Yeah, well, you know, Hubbard, Ohio is a small town. up near Youngstown. Most people are familiar with Youngstown, and I would have to say that Hubbard had not been highly recruited, but that year we had an opportunity to scrimmage against a school that was really one of the top schools in the state of Ohio, called Niles McKinley High School. Niles McKinley High School, they would host like preseason games. They would host, and they would feed all the teams that would participate. They would like have 3 or 4 different teams. We had never seen anything like that. You know, our school didn't feed people like that. You know, so they, when we knew we were going to get a chance to go over and be one of the participants in the scrimmage, we had set up at Hubbard a scrimmage that morning, and then we were going to go over there and be a part of that one in the afternoon. Well, I got cut. That guy hit me on my helmet, cut my eye. So I had to get some stitches, and they said, well, you don't have to play in that, but quite frankly, if you don't play, we're going to get run over. So I went on and played, and Ohio State was there looking at a guy they called Bo Ryan. He was really an awesome football player. And I knew they were there watching him, and that ended up being my time to shine. And so coming out of that scrimmage, they offered me a scholarship. And I think that was probably my junior year. And hey man, it was if I hadn't played, probably wouldn't have happened for me. But once I was able to gut it out and go head on, and even though I had stitches across my eye, I was able to play in that game and came out of it with the scholarship offer.
Coach, when you walked into Columbus, Ohio, into the Ohio Stadium at The Ohio State University, and you went into the horseshoe, and Coach Hayes and all the guys were there. You guys had on your red jerseys and silver. What was that about? What did it feel like? What was that like for you?
Well, you know, if you're going to talk, at the time, we would have 85,000 people at that stadium. Now they seat something like 105,000, but at the time they were doing 85,000 every weekend, and they had going before I got recruited there. They were telling me that they had 25 straight years of sold out stadiums. It sold out 25 years in a row. And so they made that big money, man, and those tickets cost arm and a leg, but they would be full. People knew they had to get it. If they didn't get the ticket, they wouldn't be able to get in. I mean, folks were scalping them tickets, selling them out there off, you know, crazy, like $200 a piece and stuff like that, you know. And so I'm saying all that to say that when you got out there, man, and you did something good, you made a hit or you made a good run, and you talk about 85,000 people up there roaring and hollering, man, it's impressive.
Now, after your playing days, you go into the coaching staff with Coach Woody Hayes, and you're able to go out on the recruiting road, and you bring in Archie, who we know as a Heisman Trophy winner and a phenomenal human being. Talk about being able to go out and sit in his living room and bring back a quality student athlete who is in the pantheon of college football greats.
Yes, well, you know, Archie had his mind set pretty much as going to Northwestern University. He lived right there in Columbus. Woody Hayes had a problem with recruiting local players, and he always felt like if the local player didn't succeed, they would not be honest and say that it's my fault, I'm just not good enough. He said it would always become the coach's fault. So he he really didn't like recruiting players that were local. At the Archie's head coach was upset because Ohio State never gave his teams any kind of look. And so that's where I had to do my student teaching. And so I became good friends with Archie's coach. And he told me a lot of those things and told me why he would never send a player to Ohio State. If he had his way, he was going to send all of his players to the University of Indiana. And so I had all that information. I went to work. And that's how I approached Archie. But it wasn't easy, man. I had to pull a lot of people from Columbus, Ohio, right there in town. And I was trying to make Archie understand that if he had the success that I thought he would have, and being right there in Columbus, Ohio, I felt like, man, he would be something. It would be something great, and that's what ended up happening. I mean, he ended up. Right now, you go to Columbus, Ohio, man, you're gonna see Archie Griffin's number all around. That number 45 that he wore. But he's big time. He's over the Alumni Association at Ohio State University right now. And Archie, they got so many things named after Archie right now, just around the university. It's just special, man, to see that how it turned out. And I'm really proud of and honored to have been able to make that happen.
Coach, while we're speaking of Columbus, can we just talk a little bit about the boxing game? When you look at James Buster Douglas and you look at his father, the Grassman, and the impact Douglas had on people when he was able to defeat Mike Tyson in the Tokyo Dome because he believed in himself. Can you talk a little bit about that piece?
Yes, because the gentleman who actually ended up being Buster Douglas's manager is a young man who's a very good friend of mine named John Johnson. And John Johnson actually was like my grad assistant on the football field. So he would set up, he would know where I wanted the dummy set up for our drills and everything. And so he would go out, set the field up before we went out to practice for me. And then when I left and came here, came to Florida A&M, excuse me, John ended up staying for a couple years, but then he ended up going into the boxing game. He ended up being, and John's son is an attorney. So they hooked up with Buster Douglas and they formed a team, and that's the team that went down and beat Mike Tyson. And so as a matter of fact, this past year in August 28th, I was up in Columbus and they honored me and a young doctor for the award that they call 42-1, because that was the odds against Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson. And so I received a 42-1 award. But it's a great opportunity to have been a part of what John Johnson has done. And then he went out on his own, man, and really now he's got his own boxing teams and still doing outstandingly well. I know he's got one great guy right now that he's expecting to be a champion.
Coach, the conversation of PWIs and HBCUs and college football, right now the landscaping is changing. The landscape is changing in terms of players shifting gears and having the opportunity to go wherever they want. There's the transfer portal. There's coaches like Deion Sanders, Coach Prime at Jackson State. Willie Simmons is doing a wonderful job with Florida A&M. You look over at Grambling and you see Mr. Hugh Jackson coming in with NFL experience. You look over at Tennessee State and you see Eddie George. Young men have an opportunity to go wherever they want, whether it be The Ohio State University or an HBCU. Can you talk a little bit about this conversation and why it's very important and it's a defining moment right now?
Well, yes, I can. Because I believe at the predominantly Black institutions over the years, we didn't get the television, we didn't get the publicity that the PWIs got. And so all of the great players, they wanted to be recognized. They wanted to be on that TV, and they knew that they would have an opportunity to do that at the PWI, and they wouldn't have an opportunity at HBCU. Well, Coach Prime and the present group of coaches that you're talking about now, Coach Simmons and Coach Hugh Jackson and all those guys, they're about to rewrite that script. So they've already done that, and I think also the atmosphere is great for that. The timing is right. So now all of a sudden a player can get that recognition, not only just being on TV, but I've listened to Coach Prime and some of his strategies, and he's also trying to make sure that these guys are getting the proper look from the pro scouts. And most of these guys who you want to recruit, you want the best players. All of us want the best players, but most of these guys, thinking that they're the best players, they want to play pro, and that's just the way it is. And so part of being able to play pro is to have the pros come in and look at you, and to somebody to say that, hey, this guy's good enough to warrant a certain amount of money. And so I take my hat off to Coach Prime for having the guts and the fortitude to go out and say some of the things that he had to say initially. And now it's almost like second nature for him and everybody else following him. You know, these guys are talking it, they're telling the truth about it, they're making it happen, and they're playing good football on top of that. So I'm really proud to see it, and I think it's going to be great for everybody.
Coach, the so-called transfer portal has really changed the game. It used to be you would transfer, you would sit out, and then you would go integrate, so to speak, into that next ball club. Now guys go and put their name in the transfer portal, and then you see them next year on Saturday, you see that guy at Michigan State or at UCLA. Talk a little bit about what that might look like.
Well, it's changing the whole scheme. I think it's and what Michigan State did with that transfer portal was just amazing. They changed their whole team in 1 year. And then they ended up with a guy who was in the running for the Heisman Trophy at running back. He ended up now, it appears that that same guy is going to be a high round draft choice with the pros. And all of this is really positive for the Michigan State program. But what that means is that everybody has the opportunity to do that. You know, so a guy knows that if he makes one mistake by picking the wrong university for his for him, he can clean that up. He can put his name in the transfer portal and then end up someplace else that he feels is more conducive to his reaching all of his goals. And I just think all of that is outstanding. I'm just hoping that you know, it benefits everybody the way it sounds like it's going to.
Coach, there's a couple other aspects to the transfer portal and the extra COVID year. I heard one gentleman say, well, you might be able to get a master's degree out of the deal because you could play 6 years in certain cases. And then also the other aspect is for college, for high school students who are coming out as a senior going into college football, there's a challenge there because now a coach can look in the portal and get a guy who's 20 years old, who's developed, and who's further along. Can you talk about some of those aspects of it?
Yeah, I saw where a young man from Ohio State, who is the long snapper, he's already got 2 degrees. He is going in back. He's coming back this year for his 7th year. And one of that, the reason he got an extra year was because of the COVID. and they granted him that extra year, but he's already got 2 degrees. He coming back and gonna finish another one. Plus, he's gonna improve his lot for the pro draft as a long snapper. Man, that makes me want to go back and play some football. Because this guy, how good can it be, man? This guy here, he ain't got to worry about getting hit too bad. All he got to do is just specialize in snapping that ball, and he's already good at it. And he's gonna come out, man, with all kind of degrees. And I'm telling you, Ohio State last year only missed 1 field goal. They were 100% on extra points. So this guy was 50% of that. He's going to be in a great position if he has the same kind of success to demand that top dollar. So yeah, I've seen that. I know it's happening right there in real time. So the sky's the limit for these guys right now, man, if they play their cards right.
Coach, injuries are part of the game, and we just witnessed Alabama and Georgia, and many people say that it's hard to beat a team twice. When you look at the national championship game and just the overall conversation of injuries as it relates to college football, how challenging is it to be healthy every time you go to scrimmage?
Well, it is challenging, and that's what you hope and pray for these young men, is that they can stay healthy and end up having the careers that they want. It's difficult. Because guys these days are so fast, so strong, with all of the weightlifting going on and all of the speed enhancements that they have through the strength programs, until it is difficult. Now, I do know that the Alabama game that you're talking about made reference to Jamison Williams, the receiver who was injured in that game. That was a no injury. It was just unfortunate. But he is so fast until he caught the ball when he went to make that cut. He was going so fast, his body couldn't stop to make it. And then his knee snapped on him. So that's how easy it is to tear a cartilage or something like that, man, and be injured for a long time. But I just think that when you go into football, you got to hope and pray that you'll come out the way you went in. That you'll be whole and healthy, and because you got to play hard, and anytime you play hard like that, you're susceptible to any kind of injuries. So it's a tough game, man. But there's so many great rewards these days till I think it'd be worth most people's time to put the work in and then go out there and give it the best they have.
Coach, recently we talked, and you had just returned from the bright lights of Las Vegas, and you talk about the College Football Hall of Fame, and you are a College Football Hall of Famer. Has that set in yet? And what is it like to know that you're in the pantheon of all the greats?
Oh, James, it has set in, and I tell you, man, it means the world to me. Because I was of the opinion that I've been nominated now, I'm going to guess maybe 9 years. I just go year to year being nominated. If you win a national championship on the field, you're automatically nominated. And so then you go from year to year and hope that you'll get the right number of votes to get in. But it seemed like each year I would never get the votes. And I kept seeing where they would be announcing the team going in and this class going in. And so I was sitting here, and it was about a year ago last week when I received the football and the invitation saying that I was selected for the Hall of Fame class of 2021. And man, I tell you, they put on an affair second to none. Now, the dinner ticket is $800 each dinner ticket. I mean, just to let you know, and it's loaded. I'm talking about they had 10 to 12 people at a table, and they had 200 some tables sold. And so that's that. But man, everybody's in tuxedos, and it's just amazing. I'll never forget the experience that I had up there for that Hall of Fame. And my wife and I, we're considering going back to just watch some of these other guys go in. You know, we got to pay for that ticket, but it's a great atmosphere, and it's something that warms my heart, man. When I think about it, I got all of the ring, the watch, the football trophy football. I mean, all of that comes with it. But that feeling that you get when they finally call your name to stand up and put your ring on, and that's how they induct you for real. Each person puts his ring on, and then you're in, and it's just a great feeling.
Coach, in closing, are there any other final comments you would like to make when we look at your Hall of Fame career, the game of football, and the game of life?
Well, now I just would like to say that I've been so blessed, man. It's I could never do as much for football as football has done for me. I've been able to be around a lot of outstanding people, guys like Bobby Lang, Bob Mungin, Pop Kittles. These guys have meant so. Of course, Woody Hayes and Coach Gaither and people like that, man. And it's just been a great opportunity. And then the players, that I have really strong relationships even to this day with a lot of the players that played in both schools, at Ohio State and Florida A&M. So it's been a great ride, and I enjoy talking about it. Now I'm glad that these young fellas are taking the reins, and I let them have all the grief, let them have all the headaches that come with it. But it's all worth it. I'll tell you that.
Well, folks, there you have it from Coach Rudy Hubbard. He is a 4-time national championship coach, 2 with HBCU and 2 with PWI, 4 college national championships. That's right. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 national championship coach. And he is also a college football Hall of Famer. I'm James Hill. We'll be right back.